Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 812. My opponent started off with e4, and I went with e5, which allows all kinds of openings, and he chose the King's Gambit with f4. Pretty interesting opening. And as I don't see this too often, I've sort of forgotten a lot of the main lines. I used to always just accept that and play some crazy line. But lately, on the occasions when I do see the King's Gambit, I've been experimenting with the King's Gambit declined. So that's the move bishop to c5. And this seems to lead to an okay position for black, although as we saw in this game, it can still get kind of crazy. So he played knight f3, which is the main move. I just wanted to point out that if he takes, then this queen check is pretty devastating here. If he pushes the pawn forward, then you have this check here and take the rook, and otherwise he has to move the king, which is pretty ugly too, and you can grab this pawn with check on e4 anyway. So this is all good for black. So white shouldn't take the pawn. So the pawn is indirectly defended, and then knight f3 is the normal move, and d6. So it looks like we've got a standard position here, and then my opponent deviated a little bit with c3, although knight c3 and bishop c4 and c3 all seem to be equally likely responses. And these two responses, knight c3 and bishop c4, seem to transpose into each other in most cases. So just look at this knight c3 line. Knight c3, knight f6, and bishop to c4. And if you'd played bishop c4 first, I would have still played knight f6 and then knight to c3 as the main response. So we get the same kind of position where we just have what looks like normal development and d3. The only thing a little bit odd about this position is there's this f-pawn, which is keeping pressure on the center. So it gives maybe a little bit of an edge to white. But it's no worse than other openings, get that slight opening edge. I mean, the appeal of accepting the King's Gambit is that if you play it well, you can equalize or maybe even be better as black. So it is tempting to accept it, but there are lots of tricky lines to learn too. So here, either a6 or bishop g4. If you play bishop g4 right away, then the knight will come to a4 most likely and round up the bishop pair. So a6 is a way of preserving the bishop pair. And then there's a lot of different ways that white can play from here. But it looks like this is kind of a standard position. Black has gotten his pieces developed and is able to castle. f5, maybe we'll try and cramp the king side a little bit. Here, let's look at this. f5, is there a standard response? Knight a5. Going after his bishop. Yeah, I guess if white can go after black's bishop, black can go after white's bishop. So anyway, seems like a game. Let's go back to what happened in the actual game. Yeah, he went with the third choice here, c3. And I developed a knight c6. Maybe knight f6 or a bishop to g4 or more to the point, but this seems to be okay as well. It's not entirely effective because basically I'm not stopping him from playing d4. He could push ahead with d4 right away. But he decided to go with the pin first, which is also an okay move. And then I blocked the pin. I think the best move here is actually, we're in a section of the opening book, by the way, where the games are few. And so you can't use this as a reliable guide so much anymore. The chess engine likes to move knight f6 here, and the idea is that if he takes, you can take back. Actually, taking is probably one of the better moves there, but he can't keep taking. Well, I guess he can, but you can take here, and so you've got that kind of counter pressure on the position. So maybe that's the best way to play there. Anyway, I went bishop d7, just breaking the pin, and then he went ahead and took my knight. At that point, we're out of the book. But he could get a good game right here by playing d4. So this was white's chance to get a real advantage out of the opening. It kind of pushes my bishop back. I mean, I could exchange first, then he can just castle or push on with d5. And seems like this is fine for white. So and an edge with that big center. But instead, he took the knight, and I took back. So maybe he was thinking of taking the pawn here. I actually wondered about this. Could he win a pawn here? Yeah, this is the case where he can't, or winning a pawn. Taking is good, actually, just to kind of weaken my center. But to continue to take runs into trouble with this queen h4 check idea. And this is even worse than before, because if the king moves, he's actually getting mated. The bishops are out now, and things are in big trouble here for white. And if he blocks the check, then you take here on e4 with check and pick up the rook in the corner. So it's just winning for white. But after, let's see, after he takes, and black takes back, and he can play d4 here, and this leads to a decent position for white. And let's see, black has the bishop pair and white has the center, and I think the chess engine kind of settled into an evaluation of more or less equal here. Those two advantages, white's advantage of the center and black's advantage of the bishop pair, seem to sort of compensate. And well, it's white's turn to move, so after white moves, the development will be about even. I've got two pieces developed. He only has one piece developed. Both sides need to castle, but it's white's turn, so the development is about equal. Anyway, that would be the way for black I mean, that'd be a way for white to stay at least even. So a decent way to play. He went with d4 immediately. Instead of exchanging and playing d4, he played d4 right away, leaving this f-pawn tension in the center. But it seems like black's a little bit better after this. So let's see, I can take here, and I did. He takes, and then drop the bishop back. And I guess, I've got a pawn in the center still. Maybe that's helpful. Anyway, white is doing some normal development. And then he pushes on with d5. And throughout this, I mean, I was a little bit worried during the game because this pawn roller looks a little bit menacing. But it turns out to be okay. And this annoying bishop here keeps white from castling. So all this turns out to be in black's favor. Let's see, he pushed on with e5. I take, he takes. And here, I make a mistake. So here I should play knight to g4. When you've got this bishop on this beautiful diagonal, why not get a knight out to help it? And let's see, the line goes like this, queen e2, and then just castling. So the point is that actually, if he kicks the knight, you might think the knight is forced back to a bad square, but you can take here. And after white takes, white has to take with the knight. You can still pin it with the rook, and it's a pin where on the other side there's both a queen and a king, so it's a pin that white can't really get out of, and then you win the knight back with a move like f6. So anyway, that's keeps that advantage to black to play that knight g4 move right in this position. I played the move queen e7. And so just for this one move, white has a chance to get the advantage black back. And the move he needs to play here is queen e2. And I was just sort of hoping I could find a way to save this knight. But I wanted to really castle and then have the e8 square available for the knight. But going back to g8 is not very good because it'll keep me from castling, and my king will be stuck in the center for longer, although I could still castle queenside, so maybe it's not too awful, but it is driving my piece back. Anyways, but the knight's got relatively few squares to go to. The chess engine is recommending knight h5 as the best alternative, but yeah, not too appetizing, really. So anyway, that would lead to an advantage to white. So that was white's chance to get an advantage again. Instead, he played bishop to g5, and now I play h6, kicking the bishop, and he went ahead and exchanged out. But ever since he played that move, that I've gotten the advantage back. So I've got the slight edge here, and then after this king d2 move, I have almost a winning advantage. Maybe it is winning after that. So once again, he needs to play something like queen e2. I could castle queenside, and he could keep in the game by playing a move like d6. I mean, this is kind of a problem position for white because I have the bishop pair and he has two knights, so he doesn't even have one bishop to oppose my bishops, and so this gives me a pretty decent edge, and I've got open lines for my rooks, and he still needs to castle, so he's got to play actively and try and mess things up a little bit here in the center, and he can stay in the game, I guess, but still with an advantage to black. But king d2, I think after this I have pretty much a winning edge. So I castle queenside. That's pretty natural, putting your rook opposite the king and the queen. Let's see, he went rook e1, putting his rook opposite my queen, and then I took. Actually, taking here is not the best move. Bishop f5. It's a move I get in later in the game, and it's but I could have played it right here, and it's a very nice move because it now the king can't find safety on either side of the board. I guess he could go to c1, which he eventually did in the game, but then that c1 is subject to checks along this diagonal, the dark squared diagonal there. So yeah, so white is going to be in trouble. F takes e5 keeps a winning edge, I think, to white, but it's maybe not the strongest move there. Let's see, he plays rook takes e5. Maybe knight takes was a little better there. Here, cancel that. Played rook takes e5, and then I went with my queen to b4. So the chess engine likes queen d6, and rook to g8 is a way to continue. But this also keeps an edge. Queen b4, king c2. And now, see, king c2 would not have been possible if the bishop had been already on f5, but now his rook is guarding that square. And I had spotted the idea that bishop f5 was a nice move here, and I started to harass his rook with f6. And he gets himself into trouble, although the chess engine doesn't criticize this move. I guess if he drops back, bishop f5 is too dangerous. So he has to kind of stay here and try and keep control of that square. Let's see, and I went bishop g4 here. What is the chess engine like here? It likes rook h to e8, just centralizing. And then if he kicks my queen, come in on this side with the check. And it thinks this is pretty good. Let's see, there's one point here, which is if he takes on h6, giving up that f5 square, then bishop f5 check, and king c1 is winning for white. So he really can't, I really didn't need to worry about that pawn at all. In fact, yeah, bishop g4, I wasn't worried about the pawn. Oh, well, the pawn was still defended. That's why rook here would have been okay. I didn't really need to worry about that pawn. But this is an okay move too, and particularly since he played rook h4. So rook h4 is the big blunder. He could try a3. I mean, I still probably have a winning edge here, but he can kind of squirm a bit. Oh, it likes queen c4 better. I guess staying in touch with the bishop there. b3, kicking the queen again. Queen to f4. Now rook to h4, and then pushing the pawn to h5. And we've hit some sort of static position here. I guess if he kicks the bishop, I can move the bishop with check and then save the queen. Yeah, so I mean, this is still a pretty big edge to white, but there's not an immediate mate there, so black can white can still hope to play on and look for mistakes. But rook to h4 is a big mistake because it gives up the f5 square, and so I just go there right away. And after this, he has to resign after bishop e3. Well, he doesn't have to resign, but if he the only reasonable way for him to block the check is with the knight, and when he does that, the rook on h4 will be undefended, so I'll play queen takes rook. So he'll be down a whole rook at that point, and the attack will still be continuing, so he decided to resign. Anyway, a nice, it was a short game, but it was fun to play, and hopefully you learned a little bit about the King's Gambit declined line. Okay, see you guys later. Bye.